A president who abuses his power in order to kneecap political opponents and spread Russian conspiracy theories, a president who uses his office to ask for, or even worse, to compel foreign nations to meddle in our elections, is a president who attacks the very foundation of our liberty. That is a grave abuse of power.
House impeachment manager Jerry Nadler there. Apologies, Ed. Hammering away at President Trump during the second day of the Democrats' opening arguments, accusing the president of abuse of power and putting his personal interests above the country. Nadler claiming President Trump's behavior goes beyond anything Richard Nixon ever did.
It is time for our headliner this morning. The White House Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham joins us. Good morning, Stephanie. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning.
So react to this idea that the president's conduct is worse than Richard Nixon.
It's absurd. They continue to be obsessed with getting this president out of office, or at the very least, affecting the next election. The facts are that they are the ones abusing their power. They are taking all of this time and going through all of this sham impeachment for something for something the president didn't do. I would say also, I noticed that Adam Schiff said yesterday that you cannot trust that this president will do anything right by this country. But when you look at our economy, when you look at everything that he's doing for our country, that is absolutely just another one of his lies.
Real quick on that, just looking at one of the slides that the impeachment managers had out there, all kinds of on-the-record testimony during the House proceedings. Ms. Hill, it was improper, it was inappropriate. Colonel Vindman, the call was wrong, had a duty to report it. Ambassador Taylor saying that there was no good national security reason to hold up the aid, that it was, in his words, wrong. So how can you say that there was nothing wrong here?
Those people are just giving their opinions. Those people also admitted that he didn't do anything wrong and that there was no crime there. Those were just opinions by people who, didn't feel good about his policies. That's all that was, plain and simple.
When it comes to this battle over witnesses and where the White House stands, I'll ask you that in a moment. But first, here's Chuck Schumer on demanding witnesses and why they say that the Bidens are not who they want to hear from.
The witnesses that we have asked for are eyewitness, like Mick Mulvaney, to everything that happened. And the few Republicans, there are some who are saying, well, I don't know if this is all really true. It's all secondhand, which it isn't, but still. Every one of these witnesses, these documents will answer this directly. Hunter Biden has nothing to do with this.
So what is the president saying today about this battle over witnesses, whether they should be called?
Well, I will say before I answer that question, I did just speak to the president actually right before I came on, and he's not even thinking about this. He was talking to me about the fact that he's speaking at March for Life today, and he's very excited. He's the first sitting president to ever go and attend and speak in person. But back to your question, he has said, he would love for people to be witnesses, but that also you have to think about executive privilege, and you have to think about that for other presidents in the future. So this president is actually trying to protect future presidents against this kind of abuse. Schumer, again, who I've never seen him on TV as much as I have during this thing. I think he's sprinting out in these breaks to get right on camera. They can keep talking about the witnesses, but they should have done it. They should have done more in the House. And it's not the Senate's job to clean up after what the House, so dismally did.
They were targeting John Bolton, and now we're hearing a lot more about calls for Mick Mulvaney to be a witness. Here's Hakeem Jeffries, one of the House impeachment managers, yesterday on that.
Certainly, we hope we can subpoena John Bolton, subpoena Mick Mulvaney.
White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney admitted at a press conference that the bogus 2016 election interference allegations were, quote, why we held up the money. Eventually, the truth comes out. There was no legitimate policy reason for holding the aid, so the truth came out.
So we know that the president has not ruled out executive privilege when it comes to John Bolton. How would he respond to Mick Mulvaney being called?
I think that would be the same principle. I mean, that is his chief of staff. There is a lot of information, sensitive information, national security information that they discuss, and that's something that should be protected absolutely for this country, and again for future presidencies. I would also say they're putting words into they're interpreting what Mick was saying. Mick was simply saying that there was corruption a country that was known for corruption, Ukraine, needed to be looked into before releasing the aid. That is something the president has said publicly over and over again about his concerns over not only corruption, but European countries that just don't share in the costs that the U.S. constantly shoulders. So these are not new things. That's all Mick was saying. They're just trying to make, put an interpretation into his conversation,
But
just like they're doing with the transcripts.
Stephanie, at a White House briefing, didn't Mick Mulvaney also say that there was, in fact, a quid pro quo?
I don't think he did say there was a quid pro quo. I think he was saying we wanted to look into corruption before we would release taxpayer money. So if that's the quid pro quo, that's okay.
A moment ago, you mentioned the president excited about speaking. First time ever an American president is going to speak at the March for Life rally in Washington. He's doing that today. On Tuesday, we noticed he's going to talk about a Mideast peace plan with the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. And on Wednesday, he'll sign the USMCA. Canada, Mexico, that trade deal, finally signed that into law, essentially. Bottom line, what's the messaging that you're trying to put, the contrast between what's happening in Congress and happening at the White House?
Well, this president keeps working. This president doesn't stop working. His energy is, it's amazing, and he just continues to work for the people of this country. That's clear. I don't even think messaging is needed. You see it. He is out there every day. In Davos, he was working every day. He was talking to people. He talked about the Phase 1 China deal that he signed. He talked about USMCA, and he talked about the pro-growth initiatives and the economy that has boomed under him. So he keeps working. That's fine. They'll continue to scream impeachment. That's fine. But we've got a very strong case, and we've got an excellent legal team that's going to come out over the next few days and show that he did absolutely nothing wrong. And then hopefully we can just get on with working for this country.
Stephanie, I just want to, and I don't have this probably ready, but Peggy Noonan writes in the Wall Street Journal about the idea of the president wanting to call witnesses or not calling witnesses. She says history wants information. It wants data and testimony. It wants as near as possible to know and understand the story. It's going to be surprising, she writes, if the president doesn't come around to backing more witnesses, going back to that battle. As the Democrats make their case against him, he will begin to see, I want more people defending me. I want my guys. How do you respond to that? Are you hearing from the president specifically on that?
Well, yes. I mean, and the president has said it publicly, too. He wouldn't mind people. He wouldn't mind Mick Mulvaney going out or Pompeo or a lot of people going out. He has done nothing wrong. He is the one who released the transcripts, let's remember. So he is being transparent. However, he's got to weigh that and balance that with national security. And that's something that can't be, the executive privilege part really does protect national security. There are a lot of sensitive matters that get discussed in this White House, and that principle has got to be protected for this president and for future presidents.
Stephanie, last question. Jim Jordan, obviously a key member of the president's team, was on this program earlier, and he predicted that come this time next week, next Friday, we could see this entire trial over with no witnesses called. Do you agree?
I hope so. I do hope so. I hope so for this country. I think that as you've seen the ratings keep going down every day in terms of viewers, I think that the country is tired of this. I think that the country, people have jobs to do every day, and they're worried about medical care for their family and putting food on the table. I think that next week we need to get this over with so that we can continue on with the business of the country.
Finally, Stephanie, before you go, and I know you're going to be joining the president for the March for Life, so we'll let you go in just a second. But as far as the president and his legal team and the preparations for tomorrow, what are they?
Well, they were talking every day, obviously. I'm not going to get ahead of anything to do with the legal strategy, but they are very well prepared, and they have a very strong case. He's got a team of lawyers with decades and decades of legal experience, and then we've got the truth on our side that he did nothing wrong.
Stephanie Grisham, White House Press Secretary, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.